Hi, welcome back to the journey into Forever is the Soul, the novel by Andrew MacWha. This week we are talking about Chapter 9, which is titled Through Another's Eyes. And the subtitle is, There is something very curious about looking into a mirror. With a steady gaze, you'll see that someone is looking back. So, is that someone you? Is it another part of you? Let's have a listen to what Andrew's going to say this week, and enjoy.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, or whatever time it is. We're moving on to Chapter 9 now. Chapter 9, Through Another's Eyes. Through Another's Eyes. There's something very curious about looking into a mirror. With a steady gaze, you'll see that someone is looking back. I like that. Chapter 9 is, again, it's a transitional chapter. There's a lot going on in the energy field as well as within the physical plane. What I like about Chapter 9 is that it evokes a sense of empathy, a sense of being able to look through another person's eyes and recognize that in some way we're all in this together, that we're all growing, we're all learning, we're all trying to understand who and what we are. Some of us are trying to understand who and what we are beyond our programmings, and we're trying to shift our perspective, and our perspective is our consciousness. And our consciousness can, in a way, separate. We can begin to recognize that there's this sort of part of us that's very human and subject to the laws of being human and subject to the laws of our programming, our conditioning, and our algorithms. But there's another level of consciousness that exists, I believe, beyond what that stream that we see through our perceptions as being real. There's this, beyond that, another level of consciousness. I call it the witness. And it's an ability to be able to look at yourself and understand that the flow of consciousness that you're experiencing is inherently and most often reactive. The witness can observe the reactivity that's taking place on a conscious level and begin to, in a sense, correct and modify that stream of consciousness, especially if it's darker, or if it's sad, or if it's upset, or if it's angry, or if it's fearful. These are all programs that get synapsed as we interact with the world outside of us, and our own thoughts produce thoughts which become that consciousness. So when I think about looking into a mirror, and I have spent some time looking into the mirror, it's an interesting thing to do, and I this is kind of fun if you want to try to do it for yourself. It's when I used to do readings back in the old days, people would say, well, how do you see auras? How do you see energy? And I would say, well, there's lots of different ways to do it, but one of the ways that is effective is that if you take a candle into a bathroom, or if you have a full-length mirror, and you can put a candle near it and darken the rest of the room, and if you can stare into the image that you see reflected back, and then go beyond the image, so the outline, start to focus at the outline of your own reflection, and you may begin to see a bit of a glow or movement or energy if you focus right into your eyes and try to stay peripherally aware of what's going on around you, around the physical image that's coming back. You may very well see energy. So I'm suggesting a fun thing to try and do. I'm not trying to suggest that anyone should do crazy things, but that's not really crazy. It's just looking into yourself in a different way and taking time. And when I say time, it could be a minute or two or three, where you just really contemplate, try to slow your consciousness rate down, try to go beyond any expectation and just focus. Now, when the story unfolds here, there's something very, very curious about looking into a mirror. With a steady gaze, you'll see someone looking back. I'm going to go back to what I said about the witness. The witness, to me, is more associated with my soul. As you guys know, I've said it many, many times. I see my ego as just being a small aspect of my totality. So my totality in that context is my soul, and my soul, based on the principles of evolution or reincarnation, has been on a journey for an awfully long time. So I'm perceiving, or I'm presuming, that I'm an old soul. And again, these are algorithms that I built inside to help me navigate through the life I'm living. And I like the feeling of being able to look through the eyes of the witness and observe Andrew's consciousness. And then, if need be, I can modify my consciousness to stay in a place where, when I look into the eyes of another, when I interact with another human being, whether it's my maid or my children or the cashier at the grocery store, I like to see divinity. So because I acknowledge that there's this force within me, this energy system, I call it a spirit or a soul. I also call it the witness because I can oversee my own egocentristic behavioral patterns flowing through my consciousness. But through the witness, I can constantly almost shift the lens so that I'm looking out of myself, and I'm aware of all my own nitter natter and what about and this and that and so on and so on. But I just see it as so temporary. It's just floating through me. It's a reaction to oh, here comes a beautiful tree. Now my brain is absorbed with this beautiful tree for a second, and now I'm back into I'm walking on the sidewalk, or my dog is don't eat that, whatever it is, you know. So you get to bear witness, thus the word witness, a different level of consciousness. And when you really start to focus at that consciousness, which I believe can be seen in a mirror, if you really look into the mirror, there's something there. And it may not be just as you see yourself. It can be beyond the self that you see, because the self that you see is very much tied to your algorithms, where your soul has manifested you in such a way that perhaps you're at a time and a place in your life where you can start to see that part of yourself, and through seeing that part of yourself, form a different relationship with your own witness. Okay, and then from the witness to see divinity in the animals, in nature, but most importantly, recognizing that we're all nature, see it in each other. So what is divinity? You know, and you can go off and abstract and extrapolate and do whatever you want in your formation or your idea of what is divinity. Okay, to me, divinity is light, it's love, it's power, it's spirit. It's the part of our humanness that aspires to what is good, what is beneficial to the immediacy of our function, but beyond the immediacy of our function, to our children's children's children. So when one looks into a mirror and one begins to associate that looking into the mirror can be a moment, a sacred moment, if you will, where a dialogue can even form between your witness and your personality, your ego. And then through that dialogue, the witness can offer an assurance and an understanding that maybe the ego forgets that it has the ability to do. So I like in the book, because what's happening in the book, and again, I have to be careful I don't give it away, because ultimately I'd like you to read the book. But there's this really neat scene in the book where two energy fields, two egos, begin to assimilate into each other's previous lives. So there's this whole transitional period where the witness that exists within the separateness of each character becomes a unified witness, which then has the power to look at all that each other had been through their egos, through the life that they had lived and the life that they had left behind. So when I wrote that chapter, I was really trying to pull a lot of the backstory together so that the reader would go, oh, wow, this goes really big. This goes into a totally different mindset as to what it is to be human, and beyond the humanness of what it is we are, what it is to be spirit. So there's, again, you know, it's a funny book, and I acknowledge that it's a funny book. I wrote it when I was ill. I wrote it when I was really trying to evolve my sense of What am I? What is it to die without dying? What is it to be conscious and to be cognitive of consciousness rather than just accept it as the status quo? No, I truly believe that there's a whole other consciousness available to us that requires a physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual alignment that all comes together through, in some ways, a discipline. And a discipline can be as simple as spending a little bit of time with yourself, looking into a mirror and really getting to know who you are beyond the normal flow of consciousness that we all experience every day. And you know what? I really understand that most of what we experience through consciousness every day is similar. We're all on the same path. We all have the same concerns, worries, fears. We sometimes look at the future, especially from where we are right now, from the perspective of evolution. Wow, there's a lot of stuff out there pushing us to grow. And I think that from my perspective, the witness in me knows exactly where we're going. I don't, but I receive bits and pieces of information. As a writer, I receive bits and pieces of information that come through and give me this idea as to perhaps this transformation that we're all going through is a reflection that is giving us a much bigger picture of what we are individually and then collectively as the world around us continues to change. So those are my thoughts on through another's eyes. It's empathy, it's understanding, it's a feeling that creates within us a commonality on one level, and as we find peace within that one level of commonality, we begin to rise our consciousness up a little bit and see another commonality where that commonality is based on a group consciousness that's rising, it's changing. And I put an emphasis on the whole idea in this story that there's an evolution taking place, and our souls have chosen to manifest, all 7 billion of us, to participate in this evolution. So those are my thoughts on chapter 9. With a steady gaze, you'll see that someone is looking back. I hope you enjoy your day, and thank you for coming along with us on the Forever Journey. Bye-bye.